I am Gabrielle Milleza. I am a teacher slash instructional coach in San Francisco, California. Um,
Yeah. How? I'm sorry, I interrupt you. I shouldn't interrupt you. Continue. Go ahead. Go ahead. What else
I
were
was
you going to
gonna
say?
say I'm entering my 20th year in education, all of which have been in the classrooms, first through third. And then last year, I took a year out of the classroom to be an instructional coach for new teachers.
Awesome. Awesome. Did you always want to be a teacher?
Kind of without knowing it. When I was really young, like elementary age, no, I didn't think of it, but I was surrounded by educators. So my grandpa was an educator and he was very close to me. That was on my mother's side. And on my father's side, although they lived in Mexico, my grandparents were also educators. But it wasn't until I got into junior college and I took one of those courses where it's like, help you figure out what you want to do. And literally the first day of class, they were like, write down some jobs you've had in the past. And all my jobs had revolved around working with children. I was like a swim instructor, a lifeguard. I I tutored with foster children. I worked
Mm.
after school programs, and like the light bulb went off, and I was like, I want to be a teacher. Like I don't need to sit through this class. I know what I want to do, and I'm going to be a teacher. And it went from there.
And do you remember your first year
I
as a
do.
teacher? How was that? What grade was it?
It was third grade in a
Okay.
rather large school. I mean, right now I work in a smaller school, but I was in a school with over 500 students. And so there was four third grade teachers, and all of us were new that year. Um,
Oh.
yes. So
Oh.
it was so it was a wild ride, and I will say what I do remember is just feeling like it was a whirlwind the whole entire year because you're I was learning while I thought I had like got the grip on something, then something else would happen. I'd be like, wait a minute, like let me learn this also. um, so it went by extremely fast, and it was just like this whirlwind of constant learning, and what I thought I learned in college was not necessarily everything that applied in the classroom. And I learned that very quick. So
Yeah, no way. You had mentioned you're teaching something and you're learning at the same time, right? Like I remember when I was teaching fifth grade math, there were some topics I was like, oh, wait a minute, I need to brush up on this. And I was on the fly learning at the same time. Like, okay, well, how do I work with these fractions? Oh, I forgot how to do this. How do I teach this? And on the fly, I was learning myself. Like I taught seventh grade math. And so, a little tougher. I thought I was pretty proficient at math. But then there's certain things I was like, wait a minute. Do I really know how to do this? Let me look that up. Did you find yourself doing stuff like that in certain?
absolutely. I found it more on the reading side and the writing side, in part because our college prep program didn't go into all the little details you need to be able to help readers, especially readers who are struggling for where they
Right.
should be at when in the range that they should be. And so it was looking up like what grammatical terms meant and how to implement them and how to notice it in writing and how to explain it in reading, and just talk about like really reading that teacher manual like every single day repeatedly to just really understand in order to be able to teach it the next day. Like it was just staying up late looking through how do I do this, what's the script at that point,
Yeah.
and just practicing new things.
What part of your career did you actually delve into the standards and actually like, okay, I know I have a good handle of the standards now. What
um,
what what year was that?
I feel like every year schools and districts would say like at the beginning when we do our PDs back to school, they're like, now let's look at those standards. And I feel like that first year and second year was really just like, I still don't really understand these, right? I
Yeah.
feel like it was about year three because I had switched from third grade to second grade. And so, in order for me to understand the difference, it was like, I need to sit through this now. And I sat with a grade level team who was experienced in second grade. They were not all new teachers anymore. And so then it was like, this is how we look at the difference between two grades. In order for you to shift to be a second grade teacher, you need to understand what standards look like because it's different here and how you're going to make
Yeah.
sure you meet those. And from there, I think is when it was more like, okay, I really do need to understand what all of this is now.
Yeah. I remember I taught first grade at Catholic school for 6 years, and we didn't really delve into the standards. It was just like, here's a curriculum, here's a script. Go ahead and just get through the curriculum book. So that's what I was doing, and I really didn't look into the standard. We didn't really talk about the standards. Then I went to LAUSD, and I taught third grade, and again there was a script. I just followed the script. It was just like turn the page, follow the script. And it wasn't until like maybe 6, 7, like maybe year 8, 9, when I was teaching middle school, that I actually looked into the math standards. I was like, I need to know these standards. I need to know ahead of time what I'm teaching, then make my own curriculum map and then teach the curriculum. Like these are the standards that we're doing for this month or whatever. This week we're doing these 2 standards for this week, and by the end of the month we have taught, I don't know, 8 to 10 standards or something like that.
Right.
But it took me a long time to realize that this was important, that I need to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think like I don't know if people understand that. I don't think that people understand the importance of knowing what exactly you're teaching, like knowing the standards. Here are the standards, here are the most important standards. When you take the state test, most questions are going to come from these standards right here. So make sure that you're teaching these standards. These other standards barely hit, on the state test, so don't worry about so much about these
Yeah.
standards. And
And I
so
think,
that's something I had to learn.
yeah. And I think it's something that all of us have to learn because, especially when you're coming in as a new teacher, there's so much, right? Even when you're looking at the teacher manual, you're looking at the
Yeah.
script, there's so much you have to take in. And like, here's what I say, here's what I do. Here's the small group, here's the one-to-one, here's the whole group, here's the independent. And then on top of that, the standards are written usually a little smaller at the bottom,
Yeah.
and it's just standard after standard. So really understanding like this is part of it. Because teachers tend to want to know what it looks like just up front. Like, what does it look like when I'm interacting with the student, right? Because we're not sitting there telling the student necessarily, this is standard 1.2.3a, and this is what you're
Yeah.
learning at the moment. So it can be hard and it takes practice, I think.
It does take practice. I got to a point when I was teaching where I was like, you know what, I don't want the script. I just need to know the standards.
Yeah.
Like I don't care what is in this curriculum book right here. As long as I teach these standards, um, I'm going to be fine. I'll use the curriculum as a tool, as a guide. But here's my own pacing plan. This is my pacing plan that I created. And this curriculum book right here and all the other resources are just tools that I use to teach these standards.
Yeah.
And then once I did that, it was like, this is easy. Like it doesn't matter if they change the curriculum. I don't know how many times. You could change it up 100 times. I know what I have to teach. So that's, and that was very helpful. It took me a while to figure that out. Like I said, it took me a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes
So,
a while, and I
okay.
also think it depends on the school you're at. Because some schools, you can't just say, I know this curriculum. I mean, I know the standards, so I can veer from the curriculum. Because there's schools where they don't want that, right? They're like, you have to stick with the curriculum. And then you get that constant, like, run around circle, like curriculum standards. And it can be harder for some, I think.
Yeah, I feel like if you went through the curriculum, you wouldn't reach all the standards because there's so much in the curriculum.
Yeah.
There's just so much in the curriculum. And if you're a good administrator, you would know that if you're telling your teachers to just page by page go through the curriculum, they're not going to finish.
Right.
It's impossible. It is impossible. So if you're a good administrator, you would know like, hey, you don't worry about that so much. Don't worry about going page by page. Know what you're teaching,
Yeah.
so, but you taught first through third grade for 20 years. What's your favorite grade?
First grade. First grade.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why is first grade your favorite?
There's several reasons. One, I have a huge passion for teaching literacy. And in first grade, we really see that shift of like diving deeper into reading and decoding more than just CVC words and like
Yeah.
longer word sentences, and also with the writing aspect, right? You're learning a lot more spelling patterns, and you just see this huge growth that happens. Also, first graders, I used to always want to teach kindergarten, and then I taught
Yeah.
first grade, and I was like, kindergarten kind of scares me. So first graders are independent enough to know what it means to like line up, sit down, right? I don't
Yeah.
have to teach you how to crisscross or how to pull a chair out anymore. They have a little bit of independence, and they're just so young at heart. There's this joy in learning. They want to be at school
Mhm.
for the most part. They want to be happy with their classmates and happy with their teacher. And there's just a joy I see with first graders. Not that there's not joy with the others, but it shifts in a different way. And here it's just very evident how much they enjoy being in the classroom with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what would you see in first grade? What's the biggest problem you would say in first grade? Let's when it comes to behavior, let's just say.
Hmm. Um, I think it can vary. I think one. is, and this is speaking for our district and our school, there's a huge problem around attendance, and
Mm-hmm.
students missing school for multiple days or inconsistently attending. And as we know, when students are not there regularly, they're missing the instruction, they're missing the lesson, and they come back and they've skipped something, and trying to fill them in with that while moving them forward can be very difficult.
Yeah, for me, when I taught first grade, and then when I observed the first graders, as an admin, it's about how they don't know how to regulate their emotions. Some of them don't know how to regulate their emotions, and when they're upset or when they're angry, they'll lash out, they'll want to hit somebody, they'll want to tackle somebody, and then they can't control themselves and they don't know what to do. And so they're really frustrated and they're angry, and some of them shout and some of them throw things, and some of them can't be controlled at that moment. They just are so frustrated and so angry, and they don't know what to do with that energy. And so, that's a problem in first grade that I saw. And it's, for me, it was like, okay, how do I teach these guys how to regulate their emotions? Because this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And now, like as an administrator, when they're on the playground, they're playing, and I see them, they're playing basketball, and somebody takes the ball, or they didn't get a chance to get the ball. It's about teaching them how to play the game. Here, this is how you play the game. This is when you get upset, you come and tell me. We'll figure something out. But it's about teaching them how to regulate their emotions. And if you could do that, then I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, 100% hear that and understand that. Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a big deal.
yeah. And
And
it takes a
if you
lot.
don't know how to teach that, go ahead.
It takes a lot of practice and showing them your patience and practice and demonstrating it for them, because they need to see it. They need to see, like, how do I recoup when I'm mad? How do I take my breaths? How do I practice these social emotional learnings that we're doing in class?
Mm-hmm.
But very real that they, the age range and the brain development at that age behind, like, that was mine. You took it from me. Let me snatch it back from you, or let me hit you because you took it from me, right?
That's right.
Um, and just learning that how to cooperate as a community in that classroom without being aggressive towards someone else is a huge part of first grade.
That's right. And then you got kids that come in with a wide range of emotional intelligence in first grade. You got kids who grew up who are taught how to control their emotions, who are taught good manners, good character, how to be respectful, how to ask, how to take turns, how to be patient. You got kids like that in first grade, and then you got kids that were not taught any of those skills.
Right.
They were not taught none of those skills at all, right? And so you got a group of kids, first grade kids, with a wide range of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And what would you say to teachers who say stuff like, that should be taught at home, that shouldn't be taught in the classroom? That's not my concern. That's their parents' concern. That they should just come in with these skills. What would you say to something like that?
I would say it is part of our concern and it is part of our job. They are here with us. Some students are with us more than they are with their parents at home on an average weekday, right? They're here from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. and all they know is school. So our job as a school is to provide a community where they can learn this. I do understand the struggle if a student is coming in saying, but my mom or dad told me this. And then it's like, oh, but here at school, you're teaching this. So I often will say to teachers, like, we need to show them how to exist here at school and then hope and teach them how we can take that outside of our school as well. Um, it is far beyond what they pay us as teachers to be able to do all of these things. And so I think it's easy sometimes for teachers to say that, like, well, they don't pay me enough to do this, right? But when we are the ones who need to teach academics, we have to have that social emotional regulation in place as well. And that all has to come together. You can't have one without the other and find that students will be successful in the end.
Sometimes I feel like, and I don't know how true these comments are on some of the posts that I post, but sometimes I find that some of these people that are in my comments are like, let's just segregate these students. Let's just put them over here, and the kids that know how to behave, we'll put them on this side. And we're not going to mix one kid who doesn't know about emotional intelligence with somebody who does, because then that kid with the one that lacks emotional intelligence is going to bully the kid that knows how to behave themselves, so I'll never mix them because that's a, I'm causing problem for the kid that knows how to behave, so we'll just keep all these kids in this corner on this side of the room. We'll just put them all together like that. I see stuff like that in my comments. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, okay, let's what would you say to something like that?
It breaks my heart. It really does. Because I feel like when
Yeah,
we do that, it's like putting blame on a child who doesn't know how to do it yet. And for us to just put blame on a child and say, you need to be over here while everyone else can be over here, that's not fair, especially if they, as we know, first graders, they may not have learned it yet, right? They haven't had these
yeah,
experiences. And I think what we have to remember is that when you have students who might not be able to control the emotions yet, you're still part of this classroom community. So it's going to work both ways. We're going to teach our classmates how to help this student, how to be
hmm
understanding, how to be empathetic for them, right? And then show the student, watch how our classmates practice this, watch how I practice this, let's try that again, like what, and figure out anything between like what are triggers for this student, right? Like, are
right.
we too loud as a classroom and that's what's causing this behavior to be really loud? Then let's work together and really show. And I think when we do that, you're showing all the students, not just one set or the other, but you're showing them how we have to work together to be successful and that you can be successful. We can have students at different regulation and at different times and different modes, but still we can help each other. And it just, I know it's not easy because I feel like I don't want to brush off teachers that are just like, you don't get it. And I know it's hard. It is so hard. But that is where we are right now in education, I think, is that we do have a hard job. And this is part of what we are as educators, is making sure that we're bringing these two together and showing and teaching empathy and these tools to use so that they can move forward and be successful in the next grade or in two grades or in middle school and high school as they move forward.
Yeah, and I feel like, I get what you're saying as well. I mean, I understand what teachers are saying. I get the fact that, I'm frustrated. It's hard. Um, yeah, these kids should come in. Their parents should take responsibility and teach them these skills. I understand that. I definitely understand that. But if they don't have these skills, segregating them and keeping them all together in one little spot, and or just not really attending to them and saying, "Oh, this kid can't learn really." Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and give him an iPad, or I'm gonna go ahead and let him be in the corner right here. I'm gonna go ahead and just let him just be here. If I don't bother him, he's just there. Then that the rest of the kids are safe. And yeah, I mean, he's not learning, or she's not learning, or they're not learning, but these kids are good. I can't buy into that. I mean, I understand the struggle. I get it, but it frustrates me to see comments like that. People say things like that. Like, I feel as an educator in the classroom, you're the safe adult. You create the safe environment, and you make sure that, like you were saying, you establish the environment that, okay, this is what we do when things like this happen. These are the triggers. And you just teach the kids, and you're the example. You're the calm, safe example in that classroom.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, and I hope that it is being done, in classrooms. But like, I mean, the comments make it seem like it's never done,
Right.
or So I'm like, man, I don't know. It's just something that weighs heavy on my heart when I think about stuff like that. Like, you
Yeah.
can't just brush off these kids. That's crazy, and they're in first grade. They don't lack, they lack these skills.
Yeah.
So it's a big, big, big thing on me right now. So
It's huge. And I think part of it is that a lot of educators haven't had the practice or the support to learn, how do we help the student? How do we figure out what the student's triggers are? How do we blend the class to be empathetic and supportive towards one another in their different times of need? And it goes, beyond just the classroom. Like, is your administrator being supportive to help you learn
right,
these things? Do we have
that's
any
right.
staff that can sit in and help observe and help you with those as well? And I think that's where, if we want to see a bigger change, we need to have those supports in place, because it's hard to just
Yeah.
learn it on your own and not have anyone kind of guide you on that.
That's correct. I mean, it does fall on administration. Are you in the classroom with those, those classrooms that need the most help, are you present? Are you doing something? Are you just brushing it off? Are you saying that you're always busy? Are you not answering your phone call? Are you not answering the walkie talkie? Are you taking a long time to get to that classroom? Are you rolling your eyes and saying, oh, it's the same teacher again? Like, I don't know, there's a lot of factors, right?
Yeah, a lot.
um yeah, so yeah, it's tough. First grade is interesting.
Yeah.
First grade is, I like I said, I taught first grade for 6 years, and I loved it. I loved it. It was magical. I would
Yes.
say it's magical because they go from non-readers to readers, from people that don't know how to add or subtract to kids who can add and subtract. Somebody that can't write a sentence to somebody that actually could write a paragraph now, like a
Yeah,
small little paragraph. So it's
absolutely.
it's magic.
It
I
is.
loved it.
Really is.
And yeah, and then you taught second grade. You went up to second grade,
I
correct?
was
How was second grade?
Second grade was also really fun. You definitely see a shift in independence once you get to second grade. So the ability to tell a
Mhm.
student, I'm helping students ABC. I need you to do pages 1, 2, 3 in your book right now, and being able to do that, right? Being able to give tasks that they understand. They're still learning to read and they're still learning to write. They're definitely at a higher level though. So you're learning multisyllabic words a little bit more, right? And decoding in that sense. And then you make that shift into like towards the end of second grade where like there's this big focus now on really you have more difficult text and now you're teaching them how to understand and comprehend even more. And they're still really happy to be there, I feel like, the second graders. And they're
Yeah.
just, I like that you see the independence with them, with their work, and saying, giving them a task and letting them go and work on their own, create their own more than you can see in first grade.
Yeah, I like second grade a lot. I never taught second grade, but I like them a lot. When I see them on the yard or I'm in the classroom, and second grade is a lot more independent. You're not dealing with first grade stuff so much. They kind of know how to regulate their emotions. You're not dealing with like them just being out of control. Maybe a few of them are like still out of control, but they have a good handle. You could talk to them. You could reason with them a little bit better, just a little bit better, right? Especially toward the end of second grade when they're getting like mid second grade after December. Oh, they're good. They're good.
Yeah.
So I like second grade a lot. If I were to choose a grade, second grade is that grade where in Los Angeles they don't take the state test. It's right under the state tests,
Right.
right? So if you're looking for a grade that's like, okay, not that much pressure, it's a good grade, kids could list, second grade would be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like second grade a lot. And
Yeah.
then you taught third grade. Third
Yeah.
grade is one of my favorite grades. Third grade is one of my favorite grades. But how was your experience with third grade?
So when I first, it was interesting because as I told you initially, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, and when I got hired in that district that I was in at the time, they were like, "You get a third grade class," and I had done my student teaching in kindergarten. I was like, "What? Like third grade?" It was a lot, but I found that speaking to third graders and getting them to understand everything from academics to friendships to group work was a lot easier than what I see now in first grade and in second grade.
Mhm.
And the level of you saying like they understand a little bit of humor, they understand a little bit of sarcasm, they can joke around and still work. Like they're not so easily distracted.
Yeah.
And so it's like I could talk to you and then you can still do your work. If we were going along the lines of like social emotional, I feel like deeper friendships are made in third grade. So they're
Hmm.
while they can regulate a little bit more, they feel things a little bit deeper as well.
Right.
So that friend component comes in, and you're not my friend, and this person did this to me or said this about me, and having to learn to maneuver around those type of relationships is another level when you're in third grade.
Yeah. Yeah. And their behaviors are bigger, I feel, in third grade as well. Sometimes. Like if the whole the whole idea that this is, you're not my friend,
Yeah,
or you talk to her, I thought you were my friend, she's not you're talking to her over there, you're sitting in that group, I thought you were sitting with me, that kind of stuff right there, that didn't really happen in first grade or second grade, but it
yeah,
does happen in third grade, and they, especially with the girls, I feel like the girls will, form little cliques and, shun some other girls. And one of the, you deal with bullying, in third grade, I feel a little bit more, that social bullying, that whole like, we're not going to play with you. We're not going to talk to you. We're not going to do those kind of things. And How would you handle bullying in third grade?
Um, we do a lot of, and we did do, but we still do just overall in our school, a lot of work around community circles. Preventing
Yeah.
things before they happen is the ideal way to go, right? Like, we need to talk about what it means, what bullying is, first of all, because that in itself can be a line that gets a little bit blurry.
Mm,
What does it mean to bully? What does it mean to help someone who's being bullied? What does it mean to look like when you advocate for yourself? What does it look like? And so we do role plays, we do community circles, we act it out, we practice like, here's, student A is pretending to be the bully. What can you say? And who do you go to? And who do you tell now? And
yeah.
then if and when it's happening, which sometimes, as we know, it does happen, as much as we try to prevent it ahead of time, spending time with those students, right? Spending time both in a safe space where they can tell us how they're feeling, what's going on, spending time with those who are the ones who might be doing the bullying, and also like what's going on, where is this coming from, opening up that conversation to
Yeah.
both sides, because we can't just fix one side and say it's all going to be okay but not address the other side, right? There's two sides. We want both to feel safe, and we want there to be this understanding of like the action and the words you're using are affecting this person. And when we have a community in our classroom, we've been working on this community, right? So you don't want to purposely
Yes.
hurt your classmate. Like, we worked so hard to care for one another, to help one another, support another, and now look what this reaction is to these actions that have happened. So we do a
Yeah.
lot of work around that.
You made a good point about like explaining what bullying is, because there is a blurry line to kids and parents
Yeah.
as well, and even teachers. There's a blurry line of what bullying is. Um, there's a blurry line between conflict and bullying. Like, okay, this is conflict, right? And everybody has conflict, and this is bullying, right? This is a one-time incident that happened on the yard or in the classroom. That's a conflict, right? There's no power struggle. There's no. This is a one-time deal. There's an argument. That person's not bullying you. You just got a conflict, and you guys got to work it out.
Right.
But if, student A, who is much more popular and bigger than student B, and they're always, taking the ball from that kid over and over and over, that happened numerous times.
Yes.
Their power balance here. This person is more popular and bigger, and it's happened over and over again. That's bullying. We're gonna call that bullying.
Right.
And then it's like, now, what do you do when you're being bullied? Like, you have to teach the kids, okay, what do you do when you're being bullied? What are some things? And
Yeah.
you pointed out role playing. That's fun, and it's fun, and it starts a conversation, and it helps the students see that, okay, um, I know what to do now when somebody's bullying me. I know what to do if I'm sitting next to somebody and they're considered the bad kid, and that person had an argument with me one time because my elbow was too close to them. That's a conflict. That's a
Mhm.
conflict. We'll solve that. But if that person sitting next to me keeps on taking my pencil over and over and over, and I tell him to give it back, he never gives it back, and he threatens me, and okay, well, that's bullying. Okay, now what do you do in that situation? What are some things that you could do? And it's about empowering the kids. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm being bullied. I could, and you give them options. Like, well, you role play that. Well, I could raise my hand and tell the teacher, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that. Okay. And you would that make that person upset? Does it matter if that person's upset that you told? I don't know. You bring them all out. You just put it all on the table. You could tell them to stop. Did you tell them to stop? Did you tell them to give them back your pencil? No, I didn't. I didn't tell them to give them back my pencil. I just let them take it every single time. Use your words. Use your words. Say no. That's not. And say it loud enough so I could hear. Say it
Yes.
loud enough so I could hear. And then I'd be like, "Hey, give him back his pencil." Like, why did you take his pencil from him? You know. The kindergarten. Just going sidetrack here. My kindergarten teacher would have her students, like, there'd be a conflict, and then the kid would go to the kindergarten teacher, and then the kindergarten teacher would be like, did you use your words? Did you tell them no? Go
Yeah.
back and tell them no. And the kids would go back and be like, no, you can't do that to me. Give me back my and I
Yeah.
was like, good, good. So it's all about doing all of those things. You
Yes.
need to teach them that this is bullying, and then how do you handle that?
Right.
I feel.
I think you also, it has to be something you practice regularly, because if we
Yeah.
do one lesson on it and then we move forward, the students aren't having that active practice to be assertive,
Hmm.
what words to use, who to go tell. Because when you're in the situation, you can, a student will feel intimidated and scared. I mean, that's behind bullying, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, practicing it regularly in our class, we do a lot of chanting back and forth and repeating, and like on our way to recess we practice what we could say, or like, who do we go to if there's a problem, and they call back, we go to the teacher. What do we do if
Yeah.
someone takes our ball? We say stop. It's like this back and forth. It's a daily reminder, because they need it, they need to practice, and they need to hear that in order to be able to do it when it actually happens.
And then you send like this message to everybody in the classroom, like, hey, it's things are going to be taken care of here. You are
Yeah,
not going to get away with whatever bullying that you're trying to do. We're all chanting the same thing. Everybody knows the same information. Everybody is knowledgeable of how to handle this situation. So
absolutely.
that it is what it is, like, and I think that that's what needs to be done, again, instead of saying that these kids can't mix with these kids, and no, let's empower them, let's teach them, let's grow them, let's bring them all together, and we're building this community, and we're gonna figure it out together,
Yeah,
and you're the safe adult. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
So then you were a coach for new teachers.
Yes. So yeah, this past year I stepped out of the
Last year.
classroom. Last year,
Yeah.
I stepped out of the classroom for the full year, and I was an instructional coach specifically for new intern teachers. So these were teachers who were actively getting their preliminary credential while they had their own classroom. So I would go into their classroom a few times a week for an hour or two and work with them and coach them in real time. They had also done a summer program with us where they did summer school, where I also coached them. So they kind of had that summer practice, and then they got their full classroom where I went in.
So what would you say is some of the most valuable things that you taught these new interns coming
Um,
in? Probably the things that you weren't taught in your curriculum program, right? Like,
yes,
but what were some of the most valuable lessons that you taught these guys?
we focused a lot on what we called our anchor practices, which were the real time practices you need to build those strong relationships, the routines in your classroom, setting expectations, and how to teach like the essential content to get student while getting students engaged. So we were really working on like, how do you scan the classroom? How are you looking every few seconds around the room? How are you praising your students with the 5-to-1 rule, right? You can't keep calling out every bad thing. You've got to call out those good things. How do you send a message to parents with good news before you say, oh, your child forgot to do this, right? So it's all about,
Hmm.
huge focus was how to build this relationship genuine with your students and your family so that you can then teach for the rest of the year and teach the content that you
Yeah.
need to teach.
You didn't just tell them teach the curriculum and that's your job and that's it.
No.
You didn't say just teach a curriculum and that's it. If you just teach a curriculum, that's it.
That's a question they have, though, right? Like, how am I supposed to do this and spend this time building these relationships when the district or the curriculum says, here's day one, start teaching right away? How do I find that? And it's really about helping. It was about helping to coach them. Like, how do you wave this in? How do you put a pause on your first reading lesson so you can even teach what it looks like to read in a classroom? What should it sound like? What should it feel like when they're in this classroom doing all of those things?
Yeah, that's tough as a new teacher. You don't know. You have no idea. You have no idea what the real classroom is like, and you understand that relationships are so huge. Relationships are so huge. Building relationships with the kids, huge. Building
100%.
relationships with administration, huge. Building relationships with fellow teachers in your grade level and in the school, huge. Build relationships with the custodian, the cafeteria workers. Build relationships with the office staff. All that is huge.
Yeah,
And if you're able to build those relationships, you have so many resources to help you out. It's not just like my partner teacher next to me and that's all I could talk to, and that's my help. I could go talk to this other teacher over here. I could talk to the office staff. I could talk to whatever. If I need help, I could talk to custodian. There was a spill, I could easily text them, be like, hey, can you help me out right here? And if I didn't bring lunch, I could text the cafeteria person like, hey, I forgot lunch. Can I get is there any extra? Like, all of that is so huge. Like those playing those little, you had mentioned when you talk to parents, don't always call them for negative things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That
know,
nobody ever taught me that.
right. And I think, when I think about my college and my credential program, I don't think they taught me that either. I think it was actually being at my school in that first year, and the principal was like, you need to reach out to these parents and you need to call every parent within the first 3 days of school and let them know something that their child did. And that has stuck with me. Like, there should always be the positives. And I know some teachers, including myself, we can get nervous when we're talking to parents. We don't know, parents are busy. They don't always want to hear our phone calls. They don't have time to take, right? But like, if we don't do that first and the first encounter is a negative one, just imagine on the flip side, the parent being like, the only time the teacher calls me is to tell me something bad about my child, right? And so
Yeah.
finding a way to connect with that parent, and reach out to them right away and be like, I'm glad to have your child in my class, or they were prepared today, or they volunteered to read something today, and just let them know that their child is
Yeah.
doing well when they're not there.
And if you take that same idea and you say, the only time I talk to a student is to reprimand them. That's the only time I have the interaction with a student, just to reprimand them. I don't have no positive interaction with them, like you're saying, 5 to 1. I have no positive interaction with them. I just, reprimand them all the time, and that's the only relationship I have with that student. That's a mistake. What do you say to that? I know you
This
teach this.
Absolutely. This is the hill I will just die on, John, because it's one of those things for me of like, you cannot only call out a child for the things that they forgot to do or that they did wrong or they broke a rule. You just cannot as an educator. Like, it should be erased from your mind. There is always something you can find that this student did well. And I'm not saying
Mhm.
that they scored 100% on their latest test. It could simply be those things of like, when they came in from recess, they sat down right away. When
That's right.
they went to line up, they used their walking feet. Like, find those things that we as teachers think should be automatic. But if you know that it's generally a challenge for that student, you need to find those and you need to just say it. And you don't need to have a party. Like, I'm not asking teachers to spend 5 minutes celebrating because a child walked a line, but I'm saying call that out. Like, thank you, student A, for walking a line. Or even a whisper in, I saw how you were walking today. Great job. Right. And
Hmm.
just those little things build up, and it shifts our mindset as teachers. We are now looking for those positive rather than always looking for what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, and it's the same. It's true for administration. The only time I talk to Mrs. So and so or Mr. So and so, it's because I'm reprimanding them because they forgot to turn in their attendance, or they forgot to turn their grades on time, or they forgot to, they came in a little bit late, or they, whatever. I walk in their classroom, and so a kid is off task, and I ask them, hey, why is that kid off task all the time? Like, if I'm always just on that one person over and over and over and over, that's not good at all. That's not good at all. What's good for the kids is what's good for us, is what's good for everybody. Like, it's just this full circle of like,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's good for everybody. What do you tell your new teachers that, like, about the importance of a strong start of a new school year, the first 4 to 6 weeks? What information do you give them when it comes to, like, okay, it's the beginning of the school year, here's what you should do?
Yeah. Um, I definitely talk about the importance of establishing your routines. You need to know your routines, first of all, have them ready and know them before the students come in. So if you're going to decide to have a line order, if you're going to decide, your call and response cues, like, have all that. And then you have to practice it, and you have to be consistent with it when you practice it. If you're a teacher who decides to do table points, for example, right, you need to be showing them and be very explicit, right? You have to be explicit with your routines and with your instructions during those first 3 to 4 weeks. You should still be consistent beyond that, but really, here's your time to do it. And the other thing is, again, coming back to, like, here's your time to start building those relationships. If you don't work on that at the beginning, it becomes much harder to try and establish them in the middle of the year. It's harder to establish it in November if you haven't already built a strong foundation with your class based on the way you communicate with them, showing respect as well as expecting respect back from them. being clear about the expectations, both expectations that you have for them and for yourself as a teacher, right? Show them that I am going to show up on time for you. I am, if I tell you that I'm going to give you extra recess, I am going to do that, right? Show them the
Yeah.
consistency behind that. And that's going to also help build those relationships so they can start to trust you, because you need that trust and it needs to be formed as much as possible in those first few weeks.
And let's just say in the first few weeks, you got students who aren't following directions. They're just not following directions at all. Maybe you got two or three of them. What advice would you give to a teacher who's struggling with something like that?
I would say one, continue to practice and then check in with those students, right? There's reasons behind
Mm-hmm.
why students
Mm-hmm.
might be struggling more to pick up on those routines than others. And it's our job as teachers to figure out what it is. So check in with them, stand next to them in line, right? Talking a little bit in line, I'm not a huge proponent of lunch bunch and saying have a lunch every day with these students, but if that is a genuine way that you find you can build a relationship with the students to find out what else is going on, right? Also checking in just with former teachers like, hey, how did it go last year? You know, were they pretty good at following two-step directions, or was it something a little bit more difficult? And what did you do to kind of help that? I think just gathering that information from the student and from the support of the student from the previous year gives you kind of a better window so that you might need to alter how you help that student learn these routines that are
Yeah.
taking a little bit more work.
My go-to move was always, okay, I see a little pushback. My go-to move was, all right, let me make this student my helper. This student needs attention. This
Yeah.
student right here is calling, screaming out, notice me, look at me over here. And so I go out of my way to calling them for an answer, go out of my way to be like, hey, I need somebody for the office. Hey, Robert, can you help me out real quick? Here, take this for me. I need somebody to, oh, yeah, Robert, come on, let's go. You're going to help me out. Can you help me carry this box right here? It's a little heavy, Robert. Can you get it? And he's like, oh, I got it. Oh, man, you must be strong. Let me go ahead. Can you put it over there on that table right there? Like, Robert, can you get the light? Get the light for me right there. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Robert. Like just that simple things. Call him out. He wants attention, or she wants attention, whoever it may be.
Yeah.
Call him out. Put it in a positive light. Get them to do something that's positive, like they're
Yeah.
servicing the classroom, like they're, I don't know, they're just benefiting everybody in the classroom. If you could do that, you're gonna win over this student, I
Yeah.
feel.
And I feel like two things to remember is one, that's one example of how you build trust, right? The student knows that my teacher is seeing things I can do, and it builds that relationship. And the other thing is that some teachers might think that, well, why should I give them these
Right.
tasks if they're not really helping me? And I think there's that need to like separate that of like, you want ideally to win this student over. You want to win them over to the side of, I want to be part of this classroom. I can be part of this class. So you do need to make that adjustment. It's not that you're rewarding them because they couldn't follow a rule or they were pushing back. You are actually opening a door for them of like, here, this is how we can help each other. And once they start helping, they gain that confidence and they gain the trust. And then you get to see that shift happen.
Yeah, you made a good point. Why should I help this student when they're not behaving a certain way? And I'm not gonna do something kind to this student right here. I'm not gonna put him in a position to win because she never listens anyway. So why should I even do anything?
Yeah.
That is such a bad mentality to have.
Yeah.
You know, it's the whole holding grudges against students, like
Right.
holding grudges and not forgiving,
Yeah.
not being, not saying that it's a new day, it's a brand new day, it's a fresh start. Everybody gets a fresh start every day.
Right.
It's like, nah, I remember what you did. I remember what you said. I remember. And so, no, the answer is no, I'm not gonna. And that's a bad position to be in. Like, think about like if you had a kid and your kid was at a different school and somebody was saying that to your daughter, like she made a mistake one day and she's lashed out, let's just say, and then for the rest of the year that teacher's like, nah, nope, I'm not gonna put her, no, I'm gonna treat her a certain way for the rest of the year now. Yeah, that's terrible.
It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking to think of. And I think I mean, both new teachers and veteran teachers, right? Veteran teachers, we fall into like our routines of things. And so sometimes we do need these reminders, right? We need to hear it from someone in a kind way, whether it's a coach, whether it's admin, another colleague, of just that reminder of like, hey, I saw it was a little bit difficult with student A today. Have you tried having them be a helper? Have you tried and being open to that? Because when I mean, most of us, right? We can be upset by a behavior and teachers can take it personally. And then you do kind of fall into that. So keeping that open mind and that open heart of like, if I can't figure it out, who can I reach out to help me with this? Because we don't want to keep repeating this and this throughout the whole year. It's a no win
Yeah.
for anybody, and especially for the student. And ideally, our job is to have these students be successful, right? Academically, socially, with their friends, with their classmates.
Yeah. When I walk into a school, I'm trying to be like the light. I'm trying to be peace. I'm trying to walk in with peace in my heart, like just peace. And so, like, my presence is a presence of peace, of strength and peace. That's
Yeah,
it. I'm not here to intimidate anybody. I'm not here to make somebody feel uncomfortable. Or I'm not here to look at. I'm strength and peace. I'm calm. This is what it is, and that works. That works. I could sit there and not say a word.
right.
I could stand there and sit there, and the kids not regulate, his emotions aren't regulated, and I just I'm calm. Like, oh,
Yeah,
take your time, take your time. When you're ready, when you're ready,
right.
and they'll breathe, and they're like, okay, Mr. Vergara, I'm ready. Like I'm ready to talk. Okay, okay. It's never like this is the 14th time I've talked to you about this situation, and
Right.
I've your mom never answers the phone anyway, and like you're gonna have 5 days of no recess for you, and it's never that. It's never that. It's like breathe, calm, let's talk. How do we make it better? You're a kid. You're a kid who's not fully developed, who doesn't understand yet, and I'm going to help you out. I'm here to help you, and yeah, there are consequences. There are consequences that have to happen. And I'm gonna make that phone call, and your mom may not answer again, but I'm gonna make that phone call. I'm gonna
Right.
make that phone call. I'm gonna document I called, and we're gonna talk about how you could go back to the classroom and be a better citizen in your classroom, and all these things. But I'm not being punitive, and I'm not trying to intimidate you, and I'm not trying to make you feel all like uncomfortable. Like that's wrong. I feel like that's wrong, but
Yeah.
that's my opinion. That's just
Do you
my
think
opinion. So
there's been a shift? I mean, you've been in education for quite a few years as well.
24 years. Yeah.
I first started, there was this impression of like the first week of school, you do need to intimidate your students. Like they need to be afraid of you so that they will listen to you. And you need to be as strict as you can be. Don't smile, don't laugh with them, and just be stern. And I think the shift that we see now, which I agree with you, I feel like it is the most effective shift, is like they have to know you want them to be there. They have to know you're calm. Like you said, you're going to be the light that comes in, and they need to know that no, I don't want you to fear me, right? Like you shouldn't be scared to come tell me a problem you have. You shouldn't be scared to come tell me a question you have. You should feel comfortable with me, and that's my job, is to make you feel comfortable. So I am going to smile, I am going to tell you some of my personal life. Like I tell my kids, my students, I do have a son, and he plays
Yeah.
sports, and these are things we like to do
Yeah.
together. They have to get to know me in order to trust me. I'm always going to come back to the trust, because to
Yeah.
have those genuine relationships, the trust has to be both ways. And if they're scared of you, and if you're intimidating them, you don't get that trust, and then it
Yeah.
becomes harder down the line.
Yeah. I made a video recently about saying like these are the rules of the classroom, and I kept the stern face in my video. Like I said, I did like this, like when you walk into the classroom, this is what you do. When you sit right here, when you use my materials, this is how you use my materials. When you have to go to the restroom, this is how you ask to go to the restroom. When you and I was just keeping the straight face like that. A lot of people talked about, oh, that's wrong, so intimidating, like this. I'm just keeping a straight face. Like I'm keeping a straight face, and this is what I'm saying. Like, hey, this is what it is. If you want to get this is how you do it. If you want to
Right.
get this is how you do it. If this is the procedures to do this, but my face is straight. I'm not like this is this. I'm not. I'm not smiling. This is how you do it, and this is how. No,
Yes.
for me, day one, straight face. I'll smile. I smile. But if I'm going over the rules, right? If I'm going to rules like, hey, when you come into my classroom, this is how you have to come into my classroom. When you ask for materials, this is how you ask for materials. That sends a direct message like, okay, he means business. This is what it
Right.
is. This is what he's expecting. If I'm saying that, but I'm joking and smile, and this is just again my opinion. If I say when you come to classroom but I'm smiling and joking and cracking, somebody might take that as like, he's playing.
Just playing around.
He's
Yeah.
playing about coming into the classroom like that. That's it looks like he's playing. And I'm not. So like I feel for me, you could smile. This is my opinion. You could smile, but when you're saying your rules, right? Like, don't send a mixed message.
Right.
Don't send a mixed message. That's all.
And I
That's all
feel
I'm
like,
saying about
I mean, agreed, 100%. There's also, when you think about our grades and our ages, right? Like when I'm teaching first graders the
that.
rules and
Yes.
expectations,
Yes.
I face it straight and I'm telling them, here's our pencils. We hold, or scissors, right? Like we always hold scissors face down. I'm not smiling and joking with the scissors, right?
Yeah.
And then we do a little rehearsal. Like, is this how we hold scissors? And then I can get a little silly with them. And then,
Yeah.
or is this how we hold the scissors? And then becomes
Yeah.
straight again. So they really understand the difference between that was a playing not okay way. And here's, but
Yes.
in fifth grade, you can have a straight base and you might not need to do those this way or that way with the scissor type of thing. I mean, they still need routines in fifth grade, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And they need the
Yeah.
expectations, but the way we deliver it as teachers is different based on the way they are
Yeah.
receptive to it as
And when
theirs.
you're in high school, you're gonna say it differently as well. You're
Right.
gonna definitely say it different. Middle schools, different as well.
Yes.
So I've been your social media. Let's talk about your social media for a quick second. How did you get involved in TikTok? How did
I
that?
I started during the pandemic when we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
As one of those there's many of us who just like we're bored at home, right? Let's go into this. And I started with my son first, who was a kindergartner at the time, and was trying to make some silly things with him to keep him occupied. And somehow, like teacher talk creeped into my algorithm, and I started seeing teachers who were teaching from home, as many of us were. They were on Zoom, and it was like, wow, like look what I'm learning here. And I started learning a lot of
Yeah.
Zoom tricks because I had never used Zoom before that, learning how to do, work just online with students. And then my content started to shift of like, I had made one video on how to, I think it was like how to split a screen. It was like my fifth video I ever made. And
Yeah.
and then I also made one on like how teachers are doing a good job. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic. It was like to an Alicia Keys song, and like I did the lip sync, and those, got there was a lot of comments and like likes, and I was like, wow, I think for me it's working in this teacher talk side now.
Yeah.
Let me keep helping to encourage teachers and learn with them and just share things with them. And then that following summer is when I started doing my summer work with new teachers, and I started posting content about like new teacher tips, new teacher takeaways, and pushing further out with that stuff.
How do you like it? How do you like teacher TikTok?
I like it. It's
Yeah.
fun. There's teachers who they put humor into it, and then you have teachers who are amazingly creative and put things out there that I would have never thought of or had no idea how to do something. And it's so wonderful. And then there's just teachers and educators who you feel like we're on the same page here. Like I can watch
Yeah.
your stuff and I'm like, yes, like I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. It just feels
Yeah.
validating to know that there's other teachers out there who go through the same practices, the same struggles, the same celebrations. So just beyond what I see, just in my own classroom or my own school site. So I like that part of it. And just the idea of like really just learning and having fun with one another.
Yeah. I enjoyed it as well. I during the pandemic, I just watched. I just observed TikTok, like, I was like, this is interesting, but I never. I was like, I can't just like, because back then it wasn't too many people talking. It was more people like dancing, and like there was music and there was words, but nobody
Yeah,
was really talking. All right,
right.
nobody was really talking so much, and nobody was making longer videos. They were real short, like 8 seconds, ten
Yeah.
seconds, like real quick videos. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'd watch them. I'm like, like, I don't know if that's for me, and then I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, I think it was like 2 years, some 2.5 years ago, I was like, let me try. And I started making little videos. I was like, nobody's gonna want to know about classroom management. I go, nobody wants to know my opinion about classroom management. And so I just make a few, and then like some of them took off, and I'm like, oh wow, they somebody thought it was valuable. So I kept making them and kept making them, and then I'd get like discouraging comments sometimes, and then I'd be like, maybe I shouldn't do it anymore. And then I was like, I'm just gonna keep doing me. I'm just gonna keep doing me and make my videos or whatever. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been an interesting journey. It's been an interesting journey. Like I make videos probably one a day, and I started the podcast this year, and the podcast is interesting because I've learned a lot personally. Like I feel like it's for me it's so beneficial. Like it's a selfish reason or whatever, but to talk to you and to talk to other educators to hear their point of view, um is very I've learned so much. This is, I don't know, this might be my 40th podcast this year or something like that, but um I've learned so much on the podcast, and just to put them out, whether people watch them or not, it's beneficial for me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've watched all 40 of them, but I've watched a good
Mm.
number of them, and there's always a takeaway. There's always something. And
Yeah,
even there's been times where I'm like, wow, that's not really how I was thinking of things. So just hearing the viewpoints, as you said, and opinions of others, and just opening our minds to like, that actually makes sense now. Like, why didn't I think of that before? Or I realized how my thinking was aligned differently. And like, it's good to hear a different perspective on things, I think is one of the big benefits of your podcast, of social media, teacher talk side, all of that.
yeah. And you're so positive on social media. You're so positive. Like you're very positive.
Thank you.
Like there is, yeah, I was going through it earlier. I was going through all of them actually. I was like, I had time. I was sitting down. I was like, let me go through. I don't know. I went through like I don't know how many videos, but I was just going through all your videos and all the questions you ask your teachers or your teacher friends, and
Yeah.
on your story how you kept on, like, I don't know, stitching, or you kept people were singing the same song as you over and over and over. And I was like, oh, that's a connection, building a community over here.
Yes.
Um, that's exciting.
It is super exciting. And I think it's fun. It's an outlet also, right? It's a creative outlet for teachers. For me specifically, I've participated in a few like friendly teacher competitions. And then in one of them, I became like TikTok teacher friends with a group where we like chat more and we do those, the stitches or the duets, right? And like we just help to
Yeah,
hype each other up and help each other just feel good, right? We all want that like hype squad, that someone's there to just lift us up. And
yeah.
it's nice to do that for others as well.
So we're coming toward the end of the podcast right now. Um, every end of the podcast, I always ask my guests what are some tips they could give to future educators who want to be a teacher.
Yeah,
If you give us 2 or 3 tips for future educators.
absolutely. I think one tip is just, I said this before and I'm going to keep saying it, build and continuously work on those positive and again genuine relationships with your students. To have a successful year with them, you have to work hard at it. You have to open up conversations with them, build trust with them, show them you care, right? Listen to them. All of that goes into building that relationship with your students, and you will find that the management after that becomes a lot more minimal when you have that relationship with them. That's the biggest one. And also just be consistent. And I recently did a TikTok about this. Like, consistency matters. You need to be
Yeah,
consistent with your expectations, uphold them, keep them up there, don't lower them, right? Help students meet that, but be consistent. Like, this is what I expect during our lessons. This is what I expect at the end of a day, right? If I were to say one more, I would say teacher self care. My first year, I remember
yeah.
going in sick because I didn't want to do sub plans. And there was one teacher who looked at me like I was crazy. And he was a veteran teacher. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm teaching." And he's like, "Go home." And I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Mhm.
Like, there was no prep in my credential program. Like, how do I do a lesson plan when I'm sick? What do I do? And,
Yeah,
but teachers make those emergency subplans at the beginning, 3 days worth. So when you have a sick day, take it, take it, take care of yourself.
Good
Um,
advice.
yeah.
Good advice.
Thank
Where
you.
could they find you on social media so that you could get your 10,000 followers?
Oh, thank you. On TikTok, my handle is at, there's an underscore between each word here. So it's at teach underscore love underscore learn underscore and underscore grow with no W though, just GRO. That is my main
Perfect.
one. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I greatly appreciate your time and your wisdom and knowledge and your expertise on teaching the lower grades, teaching grades, was it first through third? That was pretty helpful. And I know there's a lot of teachers out there that are teachers that are in first through third that would love to hear this podcast. So thank you so much for spending time here on the Difficult Student Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for just putting out everything that you are. It's so helpful, as I said, for us educators to just hear you and all your guests and all the knowledge that we're getting from each other. It's amazing. So thank you for doing this.